The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
From news anchor to accused killer. Once popular anchor Angie Mock, who worked at Fox 2 in St. Louis from 2011 to 2015, now faces a first-degree murder charge after the fatal stabbing of her 80-year-old mother, Anita Avers. Early on the morning of October 31st, Wichita police found Avers unresponsive in her bed with multiple stab wounds. Mock was found outside the home with injuries on her hands and later claimed she stabbed her mother to save herself. She is currently held in the Sedgwick County Jail on a $1 million bond, and tonight we have the latest in this investigation. Meanwhile, in rural Columbia County, Florida, the Griffith family stood accused of horrific abuse involving 9 children, including several foster kids once thought to be safe. Authorities say the home was a place of fear, where neglect and punishment replaced care and love. Investigators described filthy living conditions and disturbing treatment that left the community outraged. The parents faced a series of felony charges as prosecutors vowed justice for the children. But tonight, shock and outrage as charges against the adults have been dropped by the prosecutor. Why? We have all the details. But first, 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard vanished after leaving California with her mother Ashlee on a mysterious cross-country trip that ended in Nebraska. Ashlee came back after 3 days, but without Melodee. For weeks, the nation has watched as Ashlee locked herself in her home, refusing to cooperate or tell anyone where Melodee is. Now, new developments as investigators reveal more information about which cities Ashlee stopped in as the search for Melodee continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. The search continues for 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard tonight. And Ashlee Buzzard really more deceptive than we thought. You know, I looked at this case, and it seems very clear that she's suffering from some level of mental health issues, mental illness, whatever's going on with her, something definitely is wrong. Like, more than one person has said it. People closest to her have indicated that. So I looked at what happened here and her movements and everything else, and I was like, well, how complicated, how sinister could they possibly be in light of her state of mental health? Would she have the ability to do? And the more we're learning the facts here, this is becoming someone who really was attempting to get away with something. It's clear to me. What's not clear to me, though, is Melodee alive tonight? Now, I'm hoping she is. You're hoping she is. I think we all are. But under that scenario, that's not a pretty picture either, because it's been so many days already. It's been weeks. If she's on her own or in the hands of someone who, you know, could be doing something very terrible to this 9-year-old girl. That's if she's alive. I mean, there's a potential she could be with someone who Ashlee knows and is hiding her from the world. I think that's best case scenario at this point, that she's with someone who may be caring for her, but not being public about holding this girl. And then worst case scenario is that mom did something to this little girl and we're looking for a body. We're not looking for a girl running around or trying to escape from someplace. Investigators, though, we know need help. They absolutely do at this point. And the reason being is, don't forget the backstory here is this wild 3-day trip from Santa Barbara County, California, out to Nebraska and back. And we're getting some new details about some of the stops on this trip. And we'll get to those in just in a minute. But what we're also getting are some new pictures, new surveillance pictures. And you're looking at one of them right here. This is the latest picture. And again, this goes back to the 7th of October, 2025. We can put it up full if you want. Investigators are sharing some additional information about it now. This is at the car rental location in Lompoc, the beginning of the road trip, again on the 7th. Now, that's a wig that she's wearing. You know, I know she's got curly hair, but that's not her hair. But Ashlee was always known to wear wigs. The part that makes this troubling is that she also put a wig on her daughter, Melodee, who is behind her, walking into the rental car agency. And that wig has been described as long, dark, black, straight hair. And Melodee has hair like her mom, which is seemingly naturally curly and brownish. So that's a problem. Melodee, 9 years old, about 4'6", 60 pounds, brown curly hair, brown eyes, but again, could be wearing a wig or wigs, different wigs. So Ashlee's been known to wear them. Now, I want to show you the map now, because I think the map is important in this case as well. Take a quick look at the map. And this is what they've outlined, are some of the cities that they stopped at on the way back. It may be they, it may just be her. And that is on from the 9th to the 10th. The 9th to the 10th. So we'll focus in on some of those cities in a moment. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., criminal defense attorney, former head New Jersey County prosecutor Bob Bianchi, and national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Great to see everyone tonight. Joe, I'm troubled here by the wigs, right? This is purposeful behavior by this mother who is taking her daughter on a trip and not returning with her daughter. She's not there on the 10th when they get back to California. And if she's putting her daughter in a disguise, what does that tell you?
Oh, I'm troubled by the wigs as well. I'm troubled by the fact that Melodee was not part of the return trip. Or what I'm really concerned about is all of these people that are coming forward now and saying that this is a mental health crisis that the mother was going through. Where were these people and why are they just speaking up now? Look, technology is prolific, and there is going to be digital footprints left by the cell phone, either through GPS tracking or anytime you make a call or you use a text, or even when the phone is idle. Having said that, it looks like they really traversed through some rural areas where there are some limitations to that. The problem here is, well, it's not a problem, it's a constitutional construct. You can't compel her to speak, but there is a pathway to put some pressure on her. There is probable cause in my mind of child endangerment, and I think they should use all of the tools in their tool bag and start exerting some pressure on this mother while they can, before it's too late, and God willing it isn't.
Vinnie, music to my ears. You've been listening to me say this since this case began. Where is the pressure from law enforcement? There are things that can be done, and where is the Division of Youth and Protective Services, or whatever they call it out there? They should be in court right now, making a motion to remove power of parenting with this parent, appointing a guardian on behalf of the child, exerting the civil pressures that they can exert. They can grab the mother and bring her in those proceedings. They can force the mother to say things. Of course, the lawyer can tell her to reserve her right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment. But then also, where is the police investigation that, as Joe rightly says, if I were still the prosecutor, I'd be bringing her in on child endangerment, truancy violations, because she's not going to school. You need to shake this tree. Every second this clock is ticking without them taking aggressive law enforcement and court action is a disaster in my mind. So I'm glad to see that people are finally waking up, because we all know in missing persons, because she's now considered at-risk missing persons, that you need to, if you happen to unfortunately trample or tiptoe over some constitutional lines. I'm not saying we should encourage that. I'm not saying we want that, but if that should happen, that's nothing compared to the fact that she could be in harm's way right now. We've got to start taking care of business more aggressively.
I'm really actually very confused as to why children and youth has not gotten involved here already. I think there's many things that has been missed. One is that she should probably be in custody by now. In asking her, where is your child? And she doesn't know where her child is. That's number one. And having that footage that we've just seen of her in a disguise with her child. Why is she in this disguise? It's because she's hiding something. And I think in that realm right there is enough to bring her in. I don't understand what children and youth is doing right now, and that is a real concern. Where is she? And I'd be hammering her about, why are you wearing a wig? Why is she disguised? What are you doing with your child in these pictures? Red flags all over.
I want to put the map back up. Let me throw the map back up, Bob, because there's something else we need to talk about tonight. We put the map back up, and what detectives have now confirmed in this case is a very specific region. That Melodee was last seen along the return route via video surveillance on October 9th, 2025, in the region between the Colorado-Utah border. Investigators believe the Malibu traveled through the following areas on October 9th, 2025. Green River, Utah. Panguitch, Utah. Northwest Arizona. Prim, Nevada. Rancho Cucamonga, California. Now, more information. This is the troubling part. More deception by this mother. Through their investigation, detectives have confirmed that Ashlee left California with Melodee in a white 2024 Chevy Malibu, initially bearing California license plate 9MNG101 on October 7th. Detectives believe that Ashlee and Melodee traveled as far as Nebraska with a return trip that included Kansas. Beginning October 8th, 2025, the Malibu was observed with a New York license plate, HCG 9677. It is unknown when the plate was installed or whether additional plates were used at other times during the travel. The New York plate seen on the car does not belong to the vehicle or to Ashlee. Investigators believe it was used as a false or switched plate to avoid detection. Yes, we have license plate readers all over the country. When the vehicle was returned to the rental agency in Lompoc, the California plate was back on. So here, Bob, next level. This is next level deception that we're talking about. A wig, okay. Now she's switching plates on the rented vehicle, but we do know that as late as the 9th on this return trip, Melodee was still alive.
Vinny, two Jersey lawyers must be on the same exact wavelength. That's exactly where I was headed. This license plate switcheroo here, avoid, and the wigs are clearly eliminate anything that we were talking about a week or two ago about the possibility that this could be a parent. She gets to do what she wants with her kid. This is nefarious and deceptive action. And I would add, to in addition to child services being involved and Joe's point about endangerment of the welfare, to my point about truancy, we now have interstate transportation of a rented vehicle across state lines with a false tag, because I understand the New York tag doesn't come back to anybody, certainly doesn't come back to her, anybody she knows. So there's all these are all ways so that people understand. When you're in law enforcement, people would want us to do all these magical things. We don't have a magic wand. We can't make her talk for sure, but we can exert pressure. And these are all reasons to bring her in. And in Dr. Sue's world, maybe at a certain point in time, if they feel that she's mentally unfit or unwell, then she could be evaluated as well. Let me give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she needs to be on meds and needs to be brought back into some state of whatever you want to call it, in order to give the information necessary to find this child. The bottom line is you got to get your hooks into her, either in court, a hospital room, or a police station.
I think she knows exactly what she was doing. I do. I think she knows what she was doing. I think this is premeditation, and I think you're going to see a lot of things come out, like what was she doing up there? I don't know if all of you know, but in those specific areas, there's a lot of sex trafficking going on up there. And I wonder if that is what is going on here. That photo that we saw of her when she was little, it's very different than the photo that we're seeing now. So that photo that we saw was when she was very little in the beginning. Now she's not. I wonder if mom was dropping her off there for something. These are some things that I think we need to look at, and we need to be very concerned, because at the end of the day, what I believe is she's not alive.
Well,
so look, the fact that they cross state lines, that brings in federal jurisdiction, and they just have a wealth of resources. Regardless of probable cause to charge the mother, they certainly have probable cause to go after her cell phones and to do extractions and investigations. But I go back to, it seems like not just the license plate, even these locations were chosen because they're out of the way. They're out of the way of some of the technology that is so problematic for people doing nefarious things in other locations. They're out of the way of witnesses. It is remote by design. And again, this really seems ominous at this point, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. All right, Think Tank staying with us. We've got a lot more to get to this hour. Coming up, charges dropped in a case of child abuse allegations, horrific allegations down in Florida. We've got the details. Cody Thomas will join us on that one. Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the case of the Kentucky sheriff who shot a Kentucky judge in his chambers. Tonight, for the first time, insight into the sheriff's behavior. Was he a man in the midst of a deadly delusion? Tonight, we investigate.
The Court TV podcast will return.
On July the 3rd is when we got a call for assistance with the Department of Children and Family Services here in Florida, and the call was in relation to a court order to remove several children from the custody of this foster family. As a result of that investigation, DCF interviews, several allegations were made against the foster parents, and the investigation disclosed some information alleging severe abuse to several of those foster children. And that's how we became involved from the criminal investigative standpoint.
And as soon as that happened, we became involved in covering this story, which seemed to be like a house of horrors, filled with biological children and foster children. And this initial investigation and arrest of the parents and the adult children for the alleged abuse of the foster children in the home looked bad, like really bad and really serious. You're talking about, caging kids up. You're talking about abusive punishment, allegations involving potential sexual abuse, like the whole array. And one person making the observation or allegation that it seemed like the foster children were kind of used as the workers, doing all the chores in the house while the biological children sat around playing video games. So we took a close look at this and have been following it ever since. Here are the defendants. But now the charges have been dropped against the whole family. Brian, Jill, Liberty, and Dallin, all set free. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. He's followed this case from the beginning. He went down there to where all this happened. So let's go back to the beginning. How did the investigation begin of this family?
So this is all taking place, Vinnie, in Fort White, Florida, outside of Gainesville. This was a family. You had 2 adults in the house, well, 2 parents in the house, 5 biological kids, 4 adopted kids. So that's 9 kids, not including the 2 adult kids who were charged with aggravated child abuse. So they moved from Arizona to Florida, and this all began, Vinnie, they were members of an LDS church. This was in July. They've been arrested or locked up since July 22nd. At this LDS church, they had church camp in July. One of the Griffith children was seen with a fully functioning taser, a fully functioning stun gun that he had at church camp. So, of course, a mandatory reporter saw this kid with the taser, and that raised, alert to alert the Child Services Department, and the Child Services Department conducted their investigation, went out to the house, take a listen to more of the allegations that came out of their investigation.
During the interview of the children by DCF, various forms of child abuse were discovered. Accusations of the adopted children being beaten with a cane by Brian and also locked in their bedrooms by Brian and the other adults. As a result of the allegations of physical abuse, DCF investigators obtained a court order to remove all of the children from the home. Over the next few days, Child Protection Team investigators conducted interviews with all 9 of the children. During these interviews, allegations by the children included being caged under the bunk bed by screwing in plywood to prevent his escape, being forced to lie on the floor by the mother Jill, and having her place a sheet of plywood on top of the child's body and press down on them, resulting in splinters and pain, being sprayed in the face with vinegar as a form of punishment, being given non-prescribed medication, being instructed to lie about what happens at home, and not being taken to or provided with adequate schooling to read or write.
And Vinnie, there was also alleged sexual assault allegations against the adult son, Dallin Griffith. Now, these allegations come from the 10th child that they had who no longer lived with them, but she is back in Arizona. It says, Redacted stated that in April of 2024, Redacted disclosed to her that she had been sexually assaulted by Dallin Griffith, Jill and Brian's adult son. Redacted reported that the sexual abuse last took place in April 2024 prior to her departure. Redacted also disclosed that Dallin has taken Redacted, Redacted, and Redacted, so 3 people, in the bathroom, and she heard funny noises coming out of the bathroom. But important to note, Vinnie, Dallin was never officially charged with sexual assault. He was only charged with aggravated child abuse, but those were allegations made. And remember those slavery allegations that were made that only the adopted kids were doing all the chores, and there were reports that the adopted kids were kids of color and the biological kids weren't doing anything. They were playing and being kids. But all that's gone. All of that is gone. All those charges are dropped. All those allegations are dust in the wind at this point.
So what did prosecutors say in their dismissal, the reasoning behind all of this?
They pretty much said they looked deeper into the case, Vinnie, and that these allegations held no weight. And in fact, in their official notice of dismissal, it says, quote, throughout these depositions, we encountered a series of blame shifting, finger pointing, and outright denials of matters contained within the initial reports and response. All initial salacious gossip concerning children being treated as slaves or incidents of sexual abuse were determined to be unfounded in this investigation. Now, Vinnie, of course, we heard about, the kid being caged in the bunk bed with the plywood, not being able to escape.
Kind of like the Ferreter case where we had the boy in the box.
Ask Mr. Ferreter how he feels about these charges being dropped, right? So prosecutors say that this child had a history of violent behavior and that Brian and Jill were doing this to protect the other children from his violent behavior. And that issue was also brought up by Brian Griffith's defense attorney in a previous hearing this year. Take a listen.
I suspect, based on what I've been able to review so far, that the children would say that the child was, the subject child for which he is facing the charge was confined because he was a danger to himself and the other children. He's injured the other children. He's hurt the other children to the point of drawing blood. He strangled the family pet. And so for those reasons, there were additional restraining safety measures put in place as to this child. So I understand that there may be additionally other allegations that were mentioned that are not filed, Your Honor, but I think that it's hard for me at this time to conceive of a trial taking place, even on the filed charge, without Mr. Griffith having the ability to review all of the interviews from all of the children. What are they denying as it relates to this allegation without violating his due process rights? I would be shocked if there's even one video that doesn't mention the subject child for which the charge that Mr. Griffith is facing being mentioned in the circumstances of the disciplinary issues that were happening in the home as it related to that child.
And Vinnie, the notice of dismissal went on to continue to address this problem child, as prosecutors say. It says, quote, a jury would be asked to consider a poor family, devout in their faith, and raising 9 minor children in a small home, addressing the situation in a manner they deem appropriate to ensure the safety and security of the alleged victim and to also ensure no acts of violence were perpetrated upon the other children. The state cannot refute such an argument, and this matter cannot be presented to a jury with liberty at stake. And then, Vinnie, you also remember the other child with the vinegar sprayed in their face.
Right.
the prosecutors say they looked into that, and it was a homemade concoction of apple cider vinegar, kind of resembling sassy spray. For people that don't know what sassy spray is, that's a product you can buy that's pretty much vinegar that you spray in kids' mouths if they say something wrong, kind of like the soap in the mouth thing that previous generations used to do.
Watered down vinegar.
Watered down vinegar, a homemade concoction of that they made. But Vinnie, essentially, this case is pretty much closed. And we have a video of them obtained by First Coast News walking out of jail here. It's really quick, but you see all of them are walking out free. So all these charges are gone. The case has been dropped. The case is now closed. They're home free.
Yeah. 4 months later.
4 months later.
4 months locked up. Unbelievable development.
Right.
Cody Thomas, thanks so much. Let's bring back in our think tank. Still with us, Joseph Krowski Jr., Bob Bianchi, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Dr. Sue, let's start with this question before we get into the legal aspect of what just happened here. The children, the biological children, the foster children, should these parents be reunited?
It's a very good question, Vinny. Look, I just wanted to know, I've done a lot of work in my career with foster children and wrote a book on it. So this whole story to me sounds really skeptical. And I don't understand for the life of me why any of this was dropped. I don't understand why further investigation wasn't done. I believe that they went into that home and did an investigation and saw that they were living in absolute filth. And I believe that Florida dropped the ball here. And no, I do not think they should be reunited.
All right, Joseph Krowski Jr., I want your take on what happened to these parents. They're locked up for 4 months, then the charges are just dropped. Like, this is unusual.
Stunning. Very unusual. You know, I practice up here in Massachusetts. It's a little concerning because Florida has a reputation of being draconian in its criminal justice system, disproportionately so towards blacks. Here we're dealing with a white, conservative, religious family. The prosecution concerning to me brought up that this is a family of faith. And what's more concerning is there was corroboration to a lot of these allegations from investigators. And it's a little bit breathtaking to hear them talk about worrying about the safety of children as they have one screwed by plywood into a cage underneath the bed. What happens if there was ever a fire in that location? They were living in squalor. It seems like the adopted children were being treated differently than the biological children. Something that's not lost on me either is the LDS Church is the largest landowner in Florida. You have to believe there was some internal or external pressures put on the district attorney's office in this case.
I guess that leaves me, Vinny. You know.
No, that's, I mean, go ahead.
For the life of me as a prosecutor, I'm trying to wrap my arms around the fact that I don't think any of us can answer this question, is before you go in and take the draconian action of removing children and confirming allegations where you have, again, the Division of Protective Services, one entity with a completely different role than prosecutors, which have a criminal law component, and they made a decision that probable cause existed to arrest and incarcerate pre-trial these individuals, and then say months later that every piece of evidence that we relied upon is unreliable. So that is just like either really shady or really inept. And whether it's inept in that they got it right the first time or they got it right the last time, we need a further investigation into this. And the bottom line also is that the Division of Youth and Family Services, as we would call it here, the Division of Custody and Protective Services, can still take action to separate the parents from these children here. But I think that a higher authority needs to make a determination on what the heck is going on with the malfeasance of prosecutors that make an arrest on something as serious as this and then say that these are good, law-abiding, and devout people, and that all these charges should just be dismissed, and everybody should just go home. Nothing to see here. In 30-plus years of a career as a prosecutor, I've never seen anything like this.
And I don't know if anybody's thinking about this, but whether they were freed or not, and they go home to these children, I hope to God these children have been removed, and Florida at least got that right, because these children who are in this home are going to have severe psychological effects either way for the rest of their lives. And I'm just thoroughly disgusted about this case, and that these children have not been protected, I feel like, in any way, shape, or form.
But Vinnie, one last thing.
I just would have liked a more robust.
Let's just 1 second to say that maybe they got it right at the end, the prosecutors, and that these people didn't do these things. Well, they surely ruined these people's lives then by making these allegations, because they can have the charges dismissed and they can walk out of jail. But Joe will tell you as much as I will, their names are forever going to be in Google as being the people that did this. So no matter how you add this up, prosecutors didn't do the right thing here.
I think it's a case of public importance, and there should have been a more robust explanation of why they dropped the charges. They did mention the depositions. We have forensic interviews up here when there's young child alleged victims, and perhaps there was full, complete recantations from all of the complaining witnesses. But again, it still seems like there was enough corroboration from the early childhood investigators to have some of the charges stick. I mean, it looks like a cult to me.
My biggest question is, well, did they look into why they left Arizona and came to Florida? I'm interested in that, the circumstances there. I'm also interested in the circumstances of why anyone thought it was a good idea to have 9 children in a home that small, right? I mean,
I know. I'm glad you brought that up.
We only have about 10 seconds. We have 10 seconds, Dr. Sue. Go ahead. Final word.
I was going to say that's a great point that Vinnie just broke up. What were all those kids doing in that small, dilapidated home? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, being poor is not a crime, but then you're bringing children, 5 more children into all of that unnecessarily. All right, when we come back, a former news anchor accused of stabbing her own mother.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. This next story, you may have heard about it, a news anchor or former news anchor accused of murder. Let me show you the before and after pictures, or it's the after and before pictures. On the right and the left, that's the same person. And it's about 8 or 9 years apart. But on the right is Angie Mock on Fox 2 now in St. Louis. On the left is Angie Mock, accused of murder in Sedgwick County. Here's what the Wichita Police Department is saying at approximately 7:52 a.m. on October 31st. Officers responded to a reported cutting at a residence in the 1500 block of East Crowley. Upon arrival, officers located the suspect outside the home, that suspect being Angie Mock. Inside the residence, officers found Anita Avers, unresponsive in her bed. I think that's key here. Unresponsive in her bed with multiple stab wounds. Sedgwick County EMS transported the victim to St. Francis Hospital, where she was later pronounced deceased at 8:26 a.m. The suspect was transported to the hospital for treatment before being taken into custody and booked into the Sedgwick County Jail for first-degree murder. Angie Mock actually mentioned her mother in a news segment when she was working back at Fox 2 News Now in St. Louis. We were able to pull a piece of that clip from YouTube. Take a look.
I remember my mom would put it in one of these cans like you suggested and just put it in and it would cool, and then she'd throw it away.
Exactly.
And you said from 8 to 5 they can come pick this up?
They can come and pick those up.
All right. It's easy as that.
Okay, so that seems very normal talk about your mom. So I don't think there was any long history here. Something else had to happen between the time she was working on air and when this all happened, you know, about 8 years apart. couple of things. There are reports that she claimed a self-defense afterwards, and her mom is 80 or was 80 years old when all this happened. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us, Joseph Krasky, Bob Bianchi, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. All right, Joe, she walks into your office, or you've got to go visit her in the jail. What's that conversation like?
Oh, that conversation, of course, is going to be private and confidential, but it's also going to be an honest heart-to-heart conversation. It looks like the die's already been cast, right? This is not a question of identification of the accused. There's two avenues here. One, a mental health defense, or two, the self-defense. It doesn't seem like self-defense is very viable given the age of the mother, given the fact that she was found on her bed. So I would think it would be a mental health defense, and a mental health defense, the most important thing to do is to get an expert to see the defendant as close in time to the event as possible. And of course, you want your own expert. You don't want a state's expert to get down and have access first. So I think that I would steer her to a mental health defense as soon as possible.
Dr. Sue, what are your thoughts here about the relationship? I'm sorry, Bob. I just wanted to ask Dr. Sue about family relationships, mother-daughter, as the mother and daughter get older, right? Mom is now 80. Yeah. What are some of the dynamics and things that can go terribly wrong here?
So what I think you're saying in that clip is probably not really what was going on behind closed doors. And I think that there was probably a history of some kind of contentious relationship between the two of them. Maybe some kind of abuse was going on, or she felt that she wasn't protected by her mother. I don't know, but I'm pretty much suspecting that this woman was holding in probably a lot of stuff that happened along the way, and maybe went over there in rage and just killed her. Or they had a terrible, terrible fight, and this happened as well. But you need to understand that children of parents often hold in tremendous amount of trauma within themselves that oftentimes they do not work through until they're in their 40s or 50s.
Bob, we have about 40 seconds. Wrap this up for us.
Yeah, as a prosecutor, the name of the game here is cutting off the defenses. Joe just told you what he's going to do. We know that as prosecutors. We're going to go through all the electronic data, text messages, emails, do a complete social history, talk to friends, talk to neighbors. We want to show that this was a knowing and purposeful act, and not something that was done in the heat of passion, which can lower it from murder to manslaughter, that this was something that was done, that we'll try to figure out what that motive was, and that it wasn't self-defense. We'll also work with forensic experts, Vinnie, so we'll have to wait and see what the facts are, but we're going to try to cut those defenses off at the pass.
Bob Bianchi, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, Joseph Krasky Jr., awesome, as always. Thank you all so much. When we come back, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Sheriff Mickey Stein shot Judge Kevin Mullins in cold blood and on video. Tonight, for the first time, insight into the sheriff's behavior. Was he a man in the midst of a deadly delusion? Tonight, we investigate.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Heroic rescue. This is unreal what happened down in Hillsborough County, Florida. The sheriff's office rescuing a 7-year-old being held hostage. Let's take a listen to the sheriff and then take a look at the body camera video.
So we received a 911 call just before 2 p.m. The complainant was the sister of the decedent, and I'll get into that later, how that occurred. She said that her brother had a knife and was cutting her superficially. She was bleeding from her mouth. But what the decedent did, her brother took her younger brother, who is 7 years old, and took him in a back bedroom with the knife and was holding him against his will. For lack of a better term, he was a hostage in his own house. So they called 911, and it's a frantic 911 call. We arrived at approximately 2:04 p.m., our deputy on scene. We made contact with the decedent's mother, and we made contact with the complainant, the decedent's sister. And we verified, yes, the decedent is in the back room with his 7-year-old brother, armed at knife point, and would not let the 7-year-old free. Our deputies addressed the locked bedroom. It was locked. They gave several commands to please come out of the room, let the boy go, drop the knife. At this time, and heroic as the young boy was, he screamed through the door, break the door down. And that's exactly what our deputy did. He broke the door down. But there was a mattress and furniture behind that door, so the door didn't fully open. So again, he kicked and breached that door. As he's moving the mattress out of the way so he can get to the young boy who screamed, break the door down, he notices that the suspect, later the decedent, is holding his young brother in front of him in a chokehold with his left hand, and he has a knife in his right hand. Again, the deputies command him, drop the knife, let the boy go. He doesn't respond to those commands. Our deputy had to fire his weapon one time. One time. The suspect then fell to the ground, and we rescued that young boy to safety.
Hey, Sheriff's Office, make yourself known.
Yeah, let's leave.
Okay. Sheriff's Office, make yourself known.
Just almost send the kid out.
Send the child out, please.
What was that?
Stay in the child. Bring the child out of the room. Drop the knife and bring the child out of the room.
What was that?
Drop the knife, bring the child out of the room.
Bust down the door.
Let me see your hands right now.
You're gonna get shot. You are gonna get shot.
Let me see your hands right now. Let me see your hands right now. Let me see your hands right now. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Drop the knife. Drop it. Come on, baby. Come on.
It's not easy working in law enforcement. It's moments like that that you train for to save the life of that child. Obviously, extremely tragic situation, but they did what they had to do to save that little boy. Wow. All right, take a look at your television screens, folks. We have a missing child who needs your help. He's 16 years old. His name is Luis Tario. Luis is missing from Gastonia, North Carolina, was last seen driving a dark gray 2017 Nissan Rogue with a North Carolina license plate 3CH33RS. If you see Luis or the vehicle, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. 911, 1-800-THE LOST, or you can call the Gastonia Police Department in North Carolina. That number's on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Luis to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.